Because I have raised this issue. I've raised it in speeches. I've raised it publicly.
Now was evil Kemi Badenoch hit with a brilliant zinger at the first PMQs of the year? Well, that's up to you to decide. But after showing fake sympathy towards the death of the brother of the Prime Minister, through gritted teeth, did the non-gaff girl Kemi Badenough fall into the trap of dancing to the tune of Nigel Foghorn of Ignorance? You bet your bottom dollar she did, and went politically point scoring on grooming gangs, and asked the man who helped kickstart the grooming gangs going to jail if he really understood rape gang activity. Well, Keir Starmer then thanked her for her fake sympathy, then basically said to the gaff girl, there already had been enough inquiries and it's action that's needed, and Professor J had already given, the previous government 20 recommendations that the Tories couldn't be asked to do, and maybe she should stop trying to be an Elon Musk tribute act and think more about the victims instead of votes. Well, and gaff girl jumped up, pretending to be shocked. Truly shocked she was, that the former human rights lawyer, who helped set the ball rolling, would accuse a woman who's never met any of these victims and feels that she has no need to meet any of them because she knows better than them because she doesn't do gaffes, And she also thought that accepting 18 of the 20 recommendations was just as good as implementing them. Spoke about one victim from Telford who wanted another long, drawn-out national inquiry because, as you know, one victim far outweighs those who say they want action now. Then the woman who cannot be asked to speak to any of these victims asked the Prime Minister, why won't you listen to one victim and launch another long, drawn-out national inquiry? Keir Starmer also picked up on the fact that gaff girl only accepted recommendations and didn't act on them as well. Spoke about one recommendation for mandatory reporting that he called for 11 years ago and it still hadn't been enacted, while gaff girl had been trying to catch the attention of Space Karen. He said they've been acting. But this, for me, is the moment the Prime Minister absolutely skewered our hapless leader of the opposition.
The leader of the opposition has been an MP, I think, for 8 years. Her party have been in government for 7.5 of those 8 years. She was the Children's Minister. She was the Women's and Equalities Minister. I can't remember her, I can't recall her once raising this issue in the House, once calling for a national inquiry. It's only in recent days she's jumped on the bandwagon. Now, Mr. Speaker, in fairness, if I'm wrong about that, and she has raised it, then I invite her to say that now, and I will happily withdraw the remark that she hasn't raised it in this House in the 8 years that she's been here until today.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is being very specific. Because I have raised this issue, I've raised it in speeches, I've raised it publicly. He knows that as a minister, I would not have been speaking on this specific issue. I was not a Home Office minister, but Mr. Speaker, I will remind him about other victims who came to me who I did help. The victims of the Tavistock scandal who came to me as a minister. I didn't send them away like his safeguarding minister. I made sure, as his Labour Party were calling me transphobic, that we launched the CAS review, which even his health secretary has accepted. So we do right by victims, Mr. Speaker.
In other words, she might as well have just said this. Now, I actually think that Keir Starmer knew she had never said anything about any of this, because I think he will have checked, because he wouldn't have said it otherwise. Anyway, after she'd had a strop, she then demanded another inquiry because the last one didn't solely castigate every Muslim in the country of being a fully paid up member of a grooming gang, then asked the man who helped put these vile individuals in prison if he didn't have another long, drawn-out national inquiry, he would be accused of a cover-up. But Keir Starmer emphasised the need to prioritise victims and survivors, addressing lies, misinformation and slinging mud. They expressed concern about the delay of a further inquiry, which took 7 years and could go on up till about 2031 if they did have another one. Victims and survivors would struggle to explain their experiences, and the process could take even more than 7 years possibly. And the Children's Wellbeing Bill, which protects vulnerable children, is crucial. The opposition should vote for it, as it would prevent provisions for children at risk today. Victims want action today, but the opposition should not vote against the bill, as it could lead to misguided decisions. Now, I could go on about Gaff Girl's stupid evil, but what's the fucking point? It were all pointless anyway. But this, for me, showed the reason why she's doing what she's doing.
Later today, he will tell Labour MPs, including in Telford, Rochdale, Bristol, Derby, Aylesbury, Oldham, Bradford, Peterborough, Coventry, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Ramsgate, tell all of these people to vote against a national inquiry into the gangs which have systematically gang raped children in their constituencies. This is one of the worst scandals in British history, Mr. Speaker.
Look at that smile. That's a smile of someone who conclusively proved that for her, it's nothing to do about protecting children. No, it's what's best for Gaff Girl. Yes, the one who's never met any of these victims because, in her superior mind, she doesn't need to because she knows better. Well, after Hoyle had threatened one or two with a heavily subsidised cuppa, Gaff Girl, then in her infinite wisdom, said, "Why isn't," and in her own words, one of the worst scandals in recent British history, how will Labour members explain to their constituents that obeying the Prime Minister's whip is far more important than doing the right thing? Well, clearly at this point, Keir Starmer had had enough of Badenough's political point scoring.
She's right to say it's one of the worst scandals. It's terrible. That's why I acted on it. If her recently acquired view that it's a scandal, having spent a lot of time on social media over Christmas, not once in 8 years did she stand here and say what she's just said. Not once in 8 years. They didn't act on the recommendations. They want a national inquiry. We had a national inquiry, the J inquiry, the J report. 20 recommendations, not a single one implemented. Not a single one implemented. And she said you can do two things at once. You can't kill the bill this afternoon, wreck that bill, and protect children. There was Mr. Speaker, there was a dreadful case of Sarah Sharif that everybody will remember. This was the girl taken out of school and abused by an abuser. The bill this afternoon fixes that gap. And I know, I'm looking across, I know there are honourable members on the benches opposite who know very well that what's in this bill is necessary, that it's the right thing to do, and that would want to vote for this bill. I urge them to think twice about following this short-sighted, misguided, bandwagon-jumping approach of the non-leadership of the Leader of the Opposition. I urge them to.
Now, when even the SNP leader Stephen Flynn, who clearly has no love for Labour or Keir Starmer, compliments him on how he dealt with Gaff Girl's performative evil, you know how badly she did. But here's what I did find interesting. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey asked this question at the expense of Turd Hall, and he and his company's response was very, very interesting.
While the honourable member for Clacton may miss out on his big allowance from Elon Musk, the spectre of the richest man in the world trying to buy a British political party should give us all pause for thought. And after years of the Conservatives taking millions in pounds of Russian money, will the Prime Minister now work with us to bring in long overdue reforms of party funding so that power in this country lies with the voters and not wealthy overseas oligarchs?
I think we all had a smile on Sunday when the honourable member said how cool it was to have the support of Musk, only for Musk to say he should be removed. Just a few hours later, that's the rough and tough of politics, and of course we're looking at the question of funding more generally.
Now, the reason why I found his response very interesting was because he didn't seem to care, and I wondered why. You have Ed Davey saying a wealthy overseas oligarch is trying to buy his company, and the Prime Minister just took the piss out of him. Well, I had two thoughts on that eventually. My first one was, he may have thought, yeah, you have your fun, Keir, but I'm living rent-free in Gaff Girl's head. I'm setting the narrative while Kemi Badenoch's own political stupidity will always have her being 2 steps behind me, and whatever myself and possibly Space Karen do, Gaff Girl will follow, and when it comes to PMQs, my actions will set the narrative, and because of myself and Space Karen, you had to deal with 6 questions because of it. And then I just wondered, am I looking too deeply into it, and it's just simply, he just doesn't really care? It's all part of the grift. It's all just a giggle for me, and to prove a point after PMQs, racist Rupert made a complete tit of himself, and the rest of Refuck were giggling away as it's all good frolics for us born millionaires. Well, apart from 30p Lee, because he's not a millionaire. And their antics in the children's welfare bill as well shows how much they really care about protecting children, which clearly Refuck, they don't, do they? But what do you guys think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Let me know down below, and if you enjoy everything, House of Commons and select committee meetings, like and subscribe, and I shall just bid you farewell and take care, my friends.